in a pause, you know? Like the clouds, right? And then that'll be fine. So it's ready to go.
Good to see you.
Okay. Yeah, we're ready. Does that sound good?
Oh, great.
Awesome. All right. So just ignore the projector for now. We're going to come back to that at the end. So anyways, yeah, I'll go ahead and start off. Thanks everyone for joining us today to honor the memory and grieve the loss of Maxie Moore Jr. It took us a year to come together, and it's been a difficult year for all of us. Just want to first express my love and appreciation to everyone who was able to make it here today to celebrate Maxie's really colorful life. There were plenty who couldn't join us, and I definitely understand that, and my love goes out to them as well, anybody who's thinking of Maxie today. So for the service, we're going to have myself first speak on Maxie's life and my memories of him. Betty is going to speak. Then we're going to have Cynthia, his sister, and Ted, his friend. And then we're going to have some awesome music from Lance. Super excited about that. And then we've got a video we're going to play at the end. And then we'll go over to Bury the Ashes at the gravesite. Okay, so here we go. So Maxie wrote about 25 years ago, this was like a Toastmaster speech he wrote, that he was thrust into this world by way of Houston, Texas, on a sunny day in August to a raging Cajun and a disabled World War II veteran. He said, "I spent my formative years in South Texas, the second of 4 siblings, in a Christian-reared, God-fearing Republican family." So that's the background. So from what I understand, he had somewhat of a rocky childhood. He was ready to get out of the house. I think I can relate. He accomplished this by enlisting into the Navy in 1963. He was 17. This was before Vietnam broke out. He thought that was a great way to get out of Texas, and the war was at peace. Why not? He sailed around the world. He went all the way to Antarctica. He had already had an interest in what he called the healing arts, and he gained some training towards becoming a paramedic during this time in the Navy. He ended up stationed at Charleston Navy Hospital in South Carolina, and he described hating it there. He had just broken up with his girlfriend, and so he signed up to go to Vietnam. And then 30 of his other friends there ended up signing up. He was assigned to the USS Repose in the 1st Marine Air Wing. And his first assignment when he got to Vietnam was at a helicopter base in Chile, where every 5th day he went out on missions to search for downed pilots in the jungles of Cambodia, Laos, or Vietnam. And he said he never found one pilot dead or alive. They simply got engulfed into the jungle there. But every 3rd day he went out on helicopters, flew to the edge of the battlefield, and went to retrieve dead or wounded soldiers, and brought them back to base for medical treatment. It was in one of those missions in 1966 that he was in a chopper. They were hovering above the battlefield because the landing would put them in the line of fire. It was very intense. The pilot came over the intercom. He said that they were running out of fuel. They had just enough time to make it back to base, or they could go down and try to pick up some soldiers and head back. The pilot asked the crew what they wanted to do, and they all said, "F it," and they went down. After loading up the dead and wounded on his way back up, Maxie was shot through the foot and took out his toe. The gunner on the helicopter was also hit. He was hit in the abdomen. This left a big hole. Maxie stuffed the wounds with some dressing. He gave the Marines some morphine, and he did all that before tending to himself. And for that mission, he was awarded the Bronze Star for Valor. When you fly 200 combat missions you're awarded the Combat Air Medal. Maxie flew over 1,000 combat air missions. He was awarded 5 combat air medals. Maxie described the scene there like the Twilight Zone. People were blown apart. He thought he was one of the few people who could make a difference in the war by saving someone's life. He said there are lots of situations like the one where he was shot, but he wasn't scared. He said he wasn't scared because he was in a situation he couldn't escape. He had to perform his job. He thought to himself every time he would land someplace, the firepower would be tremendous and that he was going to die. He thought every time he got out of there that he would make it to die another day. They'll have to give me tomorrow. But he survived. In 1967, he returned to Texas. He was welcomed as a decorated war hero. He said he was the most decorated enlisted man in Texas at that time. This was before the major opposition to the war had started. He adjusted to life back in Texas well. He worked at a small radio station as a DJ. He worked at a bar on the beach of South Padre Island called Moby Dickey's. And it was at this bar that Maxie met Art Gross. Art Gross became a close friend, and it was Art who was a bit of an inventor and a guru who convinced Maxie to move to California. This decision ultimately led to him meeting Betty, and that led to me, so I'm very grateful for Art. Art has already passed away. Maxie settled into a productive life in California, working his way up through the nursing field. He started as a paramedic for an ambulance company. In his spare time, he attained associate's degree in nursing. And then he started working in emergency rooms in the ICU. Maxie had lots of parties, lots of shenanigans with Ted, Ray Morano, Rick Thomas, and other friends he met while working at Doctors Hospital in Modesto. He would throw an annual Thanksgiving event, invite all the out-of-town nurses who had no family in the area to join. He went camping in the Stanislaus National Forest. He and I would swap party stories often in late night drinking sessions. He once told me about a time that involved taking too much acid and driving to see a Cheech and Chong show. He got pulled over. He made it out. This was the 70s after all, quite a long time. But somehow, in all of that booze, that smoke, and free love, he met and fell in love with a smart and responsible Betty, who worked in the maternity ward at the hospital. He had open heart surgery to replace a mitral valve around this time. He survived that as well. They were married on Groundhog Day 1985. A few years later, after having 2 children, myself and Cassie, Maxie and Betty moved to Hendersonville to be closer to their family. Maxie worked in Nashville as a nurse case manager in the insurance industry. In the year 2000, after a tough divorce, Maxie was back on his own, and he suffered another great loss when his daughter died in 2002. Maxie also lost his job around this time. His company went bankrupt. They were insuring the World Trade Towers in 2011. Or 9/11, excuse me. He had a new low in his life. He contemplated moving back to California or even killing himself, but instead he took religion more seriously. He sought God's help. He became baptized in 2003. He also found work back at the hospital for the Veterans Administration. He worked the night shift, as he had done in California, often 12 hours a day on his feet as a charge nurse. He and the patients got along very well, swapped war stories. The VA hospital was a major fixture in Maxie's life, both through working as a patient. In December of 2010, at age 65, he retired from the VA. He was finally able to catch up on all the sleep he had missing. When asked what he was going to do when he retired, Maxie would enthusiastically say, "Nothing." An alternative answer when pressed for something that he might do, he said maybe become a beekeeper. Nobody thought that he was serious, and imagine my surprise when shortly after I actually got a job and a career as a beekeeper. Maxie loved good food. He had a hard time eating in many restaurants because he could cook it better himself at home. I was a picky child growing up because he would cook things like pineapple and barbecue chicken. No wonder Cassie's favorite food was instant mashed potatoes. Mine was mac and cheese. I grew out of that. Maxie loved wine, he loved whiskey and coke, Patron, margaritas.
Okay.
He could not go far out of town without stopping at a bar. He told me he never felt drunk, he never felt stoned, never got a hangover. I don't believe it. He was well adapted to that diet. He didn't ever plan on living this long. He didn't see a need to eat healthy or exercise regularly. One Maxieism was eat right, exercise, die anyway. He was a bit of a hedonist. All I really wanted to do was sit together, have a drink, and spend time together. Maxie was a better friend than a father. I don't recall when he was changing my diaper, but in my adolescence, our relationship was fairly sour. Up until I turned 18. While sitting at a restaurant in Hillsborough Village in Nashville, I asked him if he smoked pot, and if he would ever like to smoke with me. He said yes. Prior to then, he thought I was a punk kid. He was bright. But after that, we began to coexist more as friends. His worldview and his words of wisdom were relatable. We realized we had more in common than before. Maxie was a tough nut to crack. He could be an asshole. But behind the tough and somewhat arrogant facade, I could see a fragile boy. He had seen a lot in his life, things you cannot forget, things that he carried with his wounds into his personal relationships. We all accumulate baggage at the part of life. Maxie's baggage was his experiences in Vietnam, the loss of his daughter Cassie. But he carried on, he kept working, living and loving. I think of the B.B. King song called Guess Who when I think about him. The song goes, someone really loves you, guess who? Someone really cares, guess who? Open your heart, and surely you will see that the someone who really cares is me. Maxie always said I loved you to me. He always wanted a hug to greet me and a hug to say goodbye. In some of the last days of Maxie's life, I asked him what his thoughts were about his death. He told me he was not sad. His primary feeling was gratitude. He said he lived a good life, lived much longer than he imagined. And personally, I thought he was crazy to not be sad to be dying, though I took solace in hearing him. I know Maxie didn't believe in the afterlife. He never mentioned anything about going to a better place, but he did get baptized just in case. When I thought about what I wanted to say to everyone here today, instead of some of the sentiments that are typically expressed at funerals, I wanted to spend some time touching on the vastness of life, the beauty of nature, the inescapable reality of death. I looked at Carl Sagan, who was a famous astrophysicist. He was the original Neil deGrasse Tyson. As Carl was undergoing treatment for bone marrow cancer in 1996, a disease that ultimately took his life 6 months later, he wrote an article titled, "And the Valley of the Shadow." And here's an excerpt that I think may resonate. He said, I would love to believe that when we die, I will live again, that some thinking, feeling, remembering part of me will continue. But as much as I want to believe, and despite the ancient and worldwide cultural traditions that assert an afterlife, I know of nothing to suggest that this is more than wishful thinking. The world is so exquisite, with so much love, moral depth. There's no reason to deceive ourselves with some pretty stories which there's few good evidence. But it's better, it seems to me, in our vulnerability to look at death in the eye and be grateful for every day for this brief but magnificent opportunity that life provides. Many of them, meaning those who have been praying for him in his treatment, have asked me how it's possible to face death without the certainty of an afterlife. Carl said, I can only say that it hasn't been a problem. He took the view of Albert Einstein, one who said, I cannot conceive of a God who rewards and punishes his creature or has the will of the kind that we experience in ourselves. Nor can I, nor would I conceive of an individual that survives his physical death. I am satisfied with the mystery of eternal life and the glimpse of the marvelous structure of the existing world. together with the devoting, striving to comprehend a portion, be it ever so tiny, of the reason it manifests itself in nature. I myself have struggled with thoughts of my impending death. How could you not fear not existing, no longer having your close companions? When I think about this, I try to remind myself to be grateful, like Maxie, for the time that I have alive on earth, the time I share with my loved ones. I find music to be comforting, because of course nothing writes a good lyric like love and loss. I made a Spotify playlist that was playing during this reception. I encourage folks to listen to that. Songs I think Maxie would like that are mostly about death. In the months leading up to his death, I gave Maxie a CD from the band Purple Mountains. This is a band led by the singer-songwriter David Berman. David was a Nashvilleian. He loved the Titans, but he struggled with depression. They put out this album with his band after a 15-year hiatus because David needed the money, but he hated touring, faking enthusiasm, being the center of attention, and he ended up killing himself just before his tour was scheduled to start in 2019. I planned to see him play in Raleigh later that year. So after that happened, listening to the album, I could hear the depression, him confronting death. One song is called Nights That Won't Happen. The chorus of the song is nights that won't happen, time we won't spend with each other again, never ever again. Maxie was a big fan of saying spending time together. To me, it seemed like a form of currency that he was trying to spend. In the verse of the song, it goes, the dead know what they're doing when they leave this world behind. As much as we might like to seize the real and hit rewind, or quicken the pursuit of what we're guaranteed to find. When the dining's finally done and the suffering subsides, all the suffering gets done by those we leave behind. Later in the song, it says, have no doubt about it, hon, the dead will do just fine. And it's comforting to be reminded that Maxie's no longer suffering. He clearly was in the last days of his life. I made him lots of fried chicken, lots of weed cookies. Now the suffering gets done by those he's left behind. I often think about the randomness of life, the time and the place that we all exist. When wanting to make friends or have a connection with a stranger, I think we're all alive at the same time in the same place. That should be enough reason to support and love each other, to make friends. I try to remember to have empathy for the other person. When I would visit Maxie in his apartment just a few miles from my house in North Carolina in the last few years of his life, everyone would know him. He was a very popular guy. I wasn't really able to spend as much time with him as I would like in those final years, but I was very happy he could live mostly independently and for the first time in a city with a restaurant and a wine bar on the floor below his place. Maxie would go to the farmer's market with me. He would try to convince people to buy my honey. He was my biggest advocate. He was a major, generally positive presence in my life, but there was always this ticking time bomb aspect. He made it to see many important moments in my life. He had one last big adventure, selling his house, moving to Portugal in 2017. Finally, he made it back to live the last few years near me. Now he's left me with his genes, many of his personality traits, his perspectives. I think I'm carrying on his life. I've inherited his furniture, his car, his clothing. Mackenzie has had a double take thinking I look just like him. While sitting in his reclining chair, wearing his hoodie. And that's a good thing. I'm proud he's my father, and I miss him. Next up is Betty.
Well, I guess it's not often that a man's ex-wife is asked to speak at his memorial service, but Philip has asked me to say a few words about Maxie. Everybody hear me okay? Good. Maxie and I met in a bar in Modesto, California, where the staff at the hospital where we both work would hang out on a Friday night. And it was love, almost at first sight. But we were very different. I was serious and shy, and at that time he and Ted were the life of the party. He was death-defiant, a risk-taker, and I think it was his multiple near misses in Vietnam that made him that way. I was cautious and careful, and about the only reckless thing I did at that time was fall in love with him. One thing I will say is that my life with him was never boring. I'll never forget our honeymoon in Cabo San Lucas in February of 1985, but not for the reasons you would normally expect. He decided that we should rent a Hobie Cat one beautiful, breezy late afternoon during our stay. We went to the beach, and he assured the rental operator that he was an excellent sailor. He bought a 6-pack of beer, and we sailed out towards an island that was just a little speck in the distance in the vast ocean surrounding us. Lulled by the wind and the waves, I fell asleep. Somehow, a strong gust of wind managed to turtle the Hobie Cat, and I woke up in the ocean. The sail was now pointing straight down into the water. We crawled onto the bottom of the boat. I was near hysteria, convinced that we would certainly die, and looking around for sharks that might start to encircle us in the water. He calmly started trying to find a way to right the boat. It was beginning to get dark. The water was frigid, and I was soaked to the skin, when a fishing boat returning to shore picked us up on their headlights and came to our rescue. Afterwards, I asked him why he stayed so calm, and he replied, well, there was no one shooting at us, so I wasn't too worried. Needless to say, I have never been back on a Hobie Cat again. They say that opposites attract, and that was definitely the case with us. I tend to be a worrier, and he always had this devil-may-care attitude. In March of 2020, when the COVID pandemic hit the U.S. and everything started shutting down, I went to visit him in his apartment to make sure he was okay. I was nearly paralyzed with fear, and he reminded me of this poem that he used to recite when we were married, and he felt that I was going off the deep end. It's a bit irreverent, but then that's how he was. And the poem is Why Worry? He would tell me, there are only 2 things to worry about. Either you are well or you are sick. If you are well, there's nothing to worry about. If you are sick, there's only 2 things to worry about, he would say. Either you're going to get well or you're going to die. If you get well, there's nothing to worry about. If you die, there are 2 things to worry about. Either you're going to go to heaven or you're going to go to hell. If you go to heaven, there's nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you'll be so busy shaking hands with all your friends, you won't have time to worry. So why worry? And I don't know, there was something about that poem that was kind of reassuring. And so I'll never forget him and I sitting down next to each other on that sofa and him reciting that poem to me and saying, surely you remember this. I searched the internet for quite a while, trying to find an appropriate poem to recite for an ex-husband. And the one I found is in his memorial brochure, and it's called When I'm Gone. When I come to the end of my journey, and I travel my last weary mile, just forget if you can that I ever frown, and remember only to smile. Forget unkind words I have spoken. Remember some good I have done. Forget that I ever had heartache. And remember, I've had lots of fun. Forget I stumbled and blundered, and sometimes fell by the way. Remember, I have fought some hard battles, and won ere the close of the day. Then forget to grieve for my going. I would not have you sad for a day. But in summer, just gather some flowers, and remember the place where I lay. And come in the shade of the evening, when the sun paints the sky in the west, stand for a few moments beside me, and remember only my best. Goodbye, Maxie. I wish you Godspeed on your travels in the afterlife. Perhaps we will meet again someday on that rainbow bridge between here and hereafter. And you can whisk me away to a beach bar overlooking the ocean in heaven, where the pina coladas keep flowing, the full moon lights the ocean waves, and the music never ends.
Cynthia. I'm Maxie's sister, and the only surviving sibling right now. My other sister died last year, and so when Maxie passed away, it's sad to me, and I'm coming from a different point today about Maxie because I guess I saw him with a different perspective. And I believed in looking at the positive sides. I know 3 things about Maxie. He loved all veterans, number 1. Number 2, he loved nursing. And number 3, he loved his kids. So Maxie and I grew up in South Texas in a family with my parents, and there were 4 siblings. We spent our childhood climbing trees and playing outside and going to the beach on the weekends and going to church. And so as we grew up, Maxie bought me my first car. I was starting college, and he was home on leave from the Navy, and it was an old car that we named Clyde. It barely ran, but he wanted to do this for me. I had a flat tire almost every day on the way to school, but it did get me to where I was going, and I was grateful for it. So Maxie enlisted in the Navy when he was just a kid, and he had to grow up quick. And being in Vietnam, he grew up a lot quicker than he wanted to. So this is where his love for helping people started. And Philip had so much more details than I can even give you, thank goodness. But he was assigned to fly in the medical helicopters to take care of the wounded soldiers who were picked up from the battlefield. He was almost killed several times, and many times he was responsible for saving his fellow soldiers' lives. He was also awarded a Purple Heart Medal along with all those other medals on there, which I really didn't even know, but it's quite impressive if you take a look at it, for somebody who was only in the Navy for 6 years. And he didn't brag about it, he didn't talk about it, but it's something to be very proud of, and I'm very proud of him. After the Navy, he later went on to earn his RN degree in nursing. And I think this is right, Philip, was his last job. He was an RN at the Nashville Veterans Hospital. Yeah, okay. So he loved the veterans. He understood the veterans because he was one. He attended Christ Worship Center in White House for a while, and while he was there, he did give his heart to the Lord, and he was baptized. And he ended up going on a medical mission trip at the time with a group of people there, and the pastor at the time was Bruce Allen. And he loved that trip because he loved helping sick people, and he especially loved helping the underprivileged. And he also loved to sing. I don't know if y'all knew that. He loved, not professionally, but he loved to sing. He loved to listen to music. While he was at the church, he showed up one day to audition to sing in the choir. He did. I don't know whatever came of that, but I did hear that later. When we were kids, and he would take the Baptist hymnal in hand and climb to the top of the trees and sing. For hours, he would do that. After growing up and leaving South Texas, we both went our separate ways, and I ended up in Nashville and he ended up in California. That's where he met his lovely wife, Betty, and they married and had 2 children. First, beautiful Cassie, and then along came baby Philip. You were called baby Philip forever. Still baby Philip. When the kids were young, they moved to Tennessee and to Hendersonville, and so we got to spend a lot more time with Maxie and his family and all of our families for the last 30 plus years. We didn't always agree, imagine that, And he was very misunderstood a lot. I think he really struggled with life and being in his own flesh, and struggled with just trying to fit in somewhere. And so, but at the end of the day, you know what? He was still my brother, and I still loved him. He's the one that stayed in touch with the Moore side of the family, my dad's side. And, but he loves travel. Like he moved to Portugal at one time and planned to stay there forever. And got sick and had to come back. But one thing I know, he sure did love his kids. Philip, you were the apple of his eye. He was so proud of you. And he loved you so much. He was a better person when he was around you. Easier to get along with too. Mackenzie, he was crazy about you. He was so happy when you and Philip got together. And like the rest of you, he was never the same after Cassie died. It seemed to just suck the wind out of him. He never seemed to bounce back. And he floundered around with, like you say, all these different opinions and search for the meaning of life. And, but you know what, Philip, I believe in my heart what I knew of Maxie, that he loved Jesus, and that I believe that he's resting in the arms of his Savior now, and also with Cassie. And I think that he said a lot of things to just get by in life, but I think deep down he had that foundation, and I believe that's where he is today. And so if you can just imagine that there is a God who loves you and who wants the best for you, and it's a place of rest, and it's a place of peace. And I don't know if this is okay, but if there's any of you who don't know that and you want to talk about it later, I'll be glad to talk to you about it, or Pastor Steve, who's here today. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for coming today and honoring Maxie and paying a special tribute and celebrating his life, because he certainly did live life to the fullest. And I'm so proud of him, and I love him, and I'll miss him.
He was my longest and best friend. I moved to Modesto when I first met him, and I was eventually in charge of a trauma ICU, and Max was the first person who I met. Things would go nuts and crazy there, and I respected him for his nursing. I respected him for his focus on the job. And when all hell was breaking loose, Max was the calmest there. And Betty, you said, no one's shooting at me. And he would say that. He and I were roommates for a long time. We gave a lot of drugs to our patients, and I think we took a lot too. We drank a lot, and when Betty and Max got married in '85 and I moved, the bar closed down in Modesto. It was one of the only bars there. He was focused on his job. He never talked about his Vietnam days. I didn't know he got shot until I saw that, because he gave me the excuse. He was riding a bicycle when he was a kid, and that's how I got his toe cut off. You know, I knew he loved Jesus because he and I dated a few girls back then. And his philosophy was be like Jesus and love them all. And we did. We did. We had lots of friends. He had lots of friends. It's because of him I met all y'all, as he used to say. And I'm glad to see you again. I miss Max. I had the opportunity to enjoy his life too. I was around when Philip and Cassie was born. I was around when Betty was working at the hospital and those two were dating. I was part of that. I think I was even at the wedding, wasn't I? Best man or something, something like that. And then we talked several years ago about retiring. And he convinced me to retire after he retired. And he convinced me to come here to Hendersonville, of all places. And I was like, what the heck is he doing here? What am I doing? I've enjoyed this time here. I won't move. This is my home. I do miss him because we did have a lot of fun. And when I moved in with him initially when I came here, I realized that we're both a pain in the ass to each other, and we both had to separate to be still friends. There's not much more I can say because I want to keep that for myself. But I'm thankful that he was in my life. My good friend, I miss him.
All right, Lance, take it away.
Well, Max was a cool dude. I just remember this big old smile, laughing back like that little half smile, just way back on them little chairs. This house in Herman Mill, I'd be like, Lance, I got these chairs in the 60s, man. It's sweet chairs.
Child has grown old. Your dreams of thunder, lightning was desire. This old house would have burned down a long time ago. Make me an angel, flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just give me one thing, Lord, that I can hold on to believe in this living. It's just a hard way to go. When I was a young girl, said I had me a cowboy. Wasn't much to look at, I was just a free rambling man. That was a long time, no matter how I tried. The years, they just flow by like a broken down dam. Make me an angel, flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just give me one thing, Lord, that I can hold on to believe in this living. It's just a hard way to go. Said there's flies in the kitchen. I can hear them, they're buzzing. But I ain't done nothing since I woke up today. How the hell can I melody, 'cause my love is in their heart. I love you in a place where there's no space and time. I love you for my life, you are a friend of mine. And when this life is over, remember when we were together. We were alone, and I sing a song. I love y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so the last portion of this service will be a video we're going to play. We didn't play this, but Lance's first song, Evil from Montgomery, is a John Prine song. John Prine is a really amazing, talented singer-songwriter. And he passed away early on in the COVID crisis in April last year. He was one of the first celebrity that I knew of and cared about that had died from COVID, and really hit home this seriousness of the disease. And he was the same age as Maxie. He had the same look, same mannerisms and style, and I really thought this video that he put out in December before he died, this last album he put out, a lot of songs touch on death, and thought that this would be a good way to close out the ceremony. So, and after this, we'll go on outside to the gravesite. So, thanks.
When I get to heaven, I'm going to shake God's hand, thank Him for more blessings than one man can stand. Then I'm going to get a guitar and start a rock and roll band. Check into a swell hotel. Ain't the afterlife grand? And then I'm going to get a cocktail, vodka and ginger ale. Yeah, I'm going to smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm going to kiss that pretty girl on to the world. Oh, this old man is going to town. Then as God is my witness, I'm getting back into show business. I'm going to open up a nightclub called the Tree of Forgiveness and forgive everybody ever done me any harm. Well, I might even invite a few choice critics, those syphilitic parasitics, buy them a pint of Smiths and smother them with my tongue. 'Cause then I'm going to get a cocktail, vodka and ginger ale. Yeah, I'm going to smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm going to kiss that pretty girl on the tilt of the world. Yeah, this old man is going to town. Yeah, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna take that wristwatch off my arm. What are you gonna do with time after you bought the farm? And then I'm gonna go find my mom and dad. And good old brother Doug, well, I bet him and cousin Jackie are still cutting up a rug. I wanna see all my mama's sisters, 'cause that's where all the love starts. I miss them all like crazy. Bless their little hearts. And I always will remember these words my daddy said. He said, buddy, when you're dead, you're a dead pecker dead. heaven. 'Cause I'm gonna have a cocktail, vodka and ginger ale. Yeah, I'm gonna smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm gonna kiss that pretty girl, I'm gonna tell the world, yeah, this old man is going to town. Yeah, this old man is going to town.
I'll agree with that.
That's all, folks.
Very well.
If you would like, you're welcome to go to the interment service with us. The vehicle is over to the right if your car is not in line.
How are we going? Just walk.
You can walk.
We gotta walk. I'm gonna ride with you.
Sorry.
Sorry.